It is official. We have the Season 9's first patch. Actually, about a week from when the season started, from the season started a little bit, which actually is fairly quick for their turnarounds. So let's go. Let's react to this. Let's see what they have, and let's go from there. It has officially happened. Today, we have some buffs. We have some nerfs. And so far, we'll start with Diva. The light gun base projectile size reduced from 0.25 to 0.2 meters. Total projectile size is now 0.3 meters. So they nerfed the base projectile size of like the Baby Diva gun. Honestly, I have a lot of practice on Baby Diva. So having a lot of practice on Baby Diva, I'll be fine with this. Makes sense. I mean, it was just a large projectile, right? I think a few heroes had that issue. All right, next hero, we have a Hog Buff. Take a breather, damage reduction increase from 40 to 50%. Okay, so here's the thing. I get why. Keep in mind, I did have Roadhog, like, at the bottom of the tier list. I get it, but I was also, like, I didn't know if they were going to go... there's been this rotation of where they buff, like, Roadhog, Zarya, Orisa, and then you end up in, like, this meta where you, like... I just want to see them kind of stray away from that a little bit. But, at least they didn't, like, increase the healing. So this might not be too bad for a Hog Buff. But, like, 50%, believe it or not, is still, like... I know it's only a 10% damage reduction increase, but, like, that might make Hog, like, back in that unkillable territory. And then what happens when Roadhog becomes ridiculously strong? You mind, I don't think Hog will become ridiculously strong, but what hero do they buff after that? Orisa, when Hog becomes strong. So, I don't think that will change much for Hog. I think it will just be, for Hog players, you can kind of, you're not going to be stuck in that, like, healing yourself the whole time. So, like, as much as I want to keep going, okay, I think Hog will be fine. I'm not going to overreact to it, because I think Hog will still be fine to play against. So, Hog just needs a little bit of love. So, we'll see. All right, Zarya. Particle Cannon. Primary fire minimum damage increased from 85 to 95. And primary fire maximum damage increased from 170 to 190. Ooh. Okay, so Zarya got a buff. Here's my concern, though. Like, the biggest issue is more about how quickly tanks are dying, right? So, like, it's not about how much damage you do as a tank. It's about, like, how quickly you fall over. So, like, increasing the damage on Zarya will just end up in a result if they end up adjusting, like, the survivability of tanks at a certain point, Zarya will become really, really, like, OP. Now, keep in mind, I don't think this makes Zarya. I don't think this makes Zarya extremely OP, in a sense. But, like, if they end up doing, like, tank like, mitigation, etc. later on, and improving on tank, like, to the survivability, if they left Zarya at this, then Zarya would become really OP. But I could see this becoming a problem in some ranks, because Zarya already kind of runs it down mid on people, no problem. So given that a little bit more damage, still, though, it could just be, like, a compensation for, like, looking at other stuff, if that makes sense. So I'm okay to, like, kind of look at that and see how it plays out. I'm very surprised they went that route with Zarya. Roadhog, I get a little bit. I just don't want to see it end up with a buff Orisa next. That's my concern. If we don't get an Orisa buff in the next mid-season patch, then I'll be happy. All right, damage. Base projectile size reduced from 0.1 to 0.075. Total projectile size is now 0.175. They nerfed Hanzo? That's interesting. I feel like the headshot has made it for Hanzo players where, like, this is an interesting one. Players are hitting more shots on Hanzo. Players are struggling on Hanzo at higher ranks because they can't follow up on one-shot kills anymore. So it's just like they get people low and they have to rely on other people to get them. So it's an interesting one. I think Hanzo players may not be happy with this. I think players playing against Hanzo are going to be going, let's go! You know what I mean? I think that's kind of where that will be at, right? All right, Junkrat. We have a Junkrat Buff. Concussion Mine. Cooldown decreased from 8 to 7 seconds. Okay. Maximum damage increased from 110 to 120. And then the minimum damage increased from 20 to 55. Ooh. Okay, that'll be interesting. Okay, so just to give people an idea of what that means. From 20 to 55 is basically, like, say you're at the absolute maximum range. The absolute maximum range, it will do 55 damage to you no matter what. Is that correct? Like, the absolute yeah, that's a lot. That is a huge change from the mine point of view. You still don't have the one shot, right? For most heroes, but that minimum damage increase is gonna, like, the only concern I have is it might cause supports to fall behind a little bit on heals again, especially with the 20%, because there's just so much more AoE damage happening there. So, like, from a buff point of view, I feel like that's gonna be really good, right? And I think the mines do apply the debuff, so it's like, Junkrat players will be happy, because, like, Junkrat is, like, been struggling. But I do think that Junkrat, like, connoisseurs are going to be really good with this mine buff. Because they always find the way to, like, min-max those buffs. So, we'll see, though. We'll see. Soldier 76, the heavy pulse rifle, now uses the smaller 0.05 meter hit scan projectile size modifier. Total projectile size is now 0.05 meters. Sounds like they're just making it so you're not hitting as many shots as Soldier 76, which the only concern I have with that is If you like make it so Soldier can't compete with some of the other heroes in that, then like doesn't it just make Widow that much better in a lot of situations? Granted, I don't know the exact change in this one, but I feel like it's not too bad. It just feels like Widow will still dominate there. I think Soldier will still be good. It just depends where they go next. Does that make sense? I think Soldier will still be good though. I think Soldier will still be good. Chili Winners, thanks for the 54 months of the feature Prime. Thank you, appreciate it. Tracer, minimum fall off range reduced from 12 to 10. Hey, that's actually pretty good. That's actually pretty good. Yeah, that seems like a good compromise. That's good. This just means Tracer has to get closer to be able to do that damage output. So before, if they were at 12 meters, I think that's what it was, they would do maximum damage to you. Now at 10 meters, like, so basically there's just, Tracer's gonna be closer. Like, Tracer has to be a little bit closer now. I think that's good. Mainly as a tank player, it was frustrating to play against that. Because, like, they were just so out of range, you couldn't do anything, so. Why are we just typing question marks? What did I miss? No, I'm saying it's a good thing. That's a good thing. Why are we typing question marks? I don't even... Widowmaker! Oh, okay, this makes sense. Okay, now uses the smaller 0.05 meter hit scan projectiles modifier, so the same thing as Soldier. Scoped damage fall off min-max range increased... Wait, okay, increased from 50 to 70 meters? Wait, is that a buff or is that a nerf? Because there's no way that they didn't buff Widow, right? That's a nerf, right? A nerf, okay, I was gonna say. The min-max was at 40 to 60, now it's at 50 to 70? So the fall... Wait, no! That's a buff. So they make it so the shot's a little bit harder to hit, but then they increase the range on what you can get the value of. So technically they buffed Widow? It just won't be as easy to hit the shot? I feel like for some Widow players, that's gonna be a buff, right? If you can hit your shots. For players who are shooting like giant redwood like beach balls at people, you might struggle a little bit more with that, but like that's a buff for Widow. I'm surprised. That's it's a nerf and a buff. Yeah, it's a nerf to the projectile size. So players who are hitting shots on Widow, you might struggle a little bit more. But then like the scoped shot fall off min-max, right? That's a buff. 50 to 70 from 40 to 60. So your min damage fall off is now at 50, and your max is at 70. So now you have a longer range. Yeah, so it's generally a range buff. But yeah, that's interesting. That's definitely interesting to see that they went with the Widow range on that. That's a to be determined. All right, support Ayari. Cooldown decreased from 8 to 6 seconds for the heal and pylon. Cooldown when destroyed by enemies decreased from 15 to 12 seconds. That's not bad. Heal and pylon needed that. I think heal and pylon was struggling a little bit. I liked that it increased. One thing I will say, I'm actually happy Blizzard didn't like go and buff the HP again. Sometimes there's just like tendency to go and buff pylon or over buff it. I think like making it so it's easier to kill the pylon still, but also make it so you get it back quicker is probably a good middle ground. Rather than going over the top, right? You know what I'm saying? I feel like that's a good change. Captive Sun. Sunstruck explosion damage increased from 100 to 160. Okay, that's a lot of damage. Sunstruck explosion now has damage fall off again, reducing damage by up to 25%. So it's a buff overall. The damage fall off means that like the range on it is gonna be like the range of like the amount of damage it does. So it's still gonna be good actually. What is 10% of 160 is 16, so 32, 160 minus 32, that's like a what, 128 now? So it still does 128 damage, right? At the absolute, like, minimum? Is that correct? 120? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I see where I did the map. Okay, yeah. That's not too bad. You're right, because the min damage would be up to 120. Okay, so yeah. I mean, that's a buff. So Ayari got buffed. I mean, Ayari was one of those heroes that definitely probably needed buffs. I think at that point, right? Like, I think that was something that people had talked about, so. All right, Lucio. The base projectile size reduced from 0.15 to 0.1. Total projectile size now 0.25. I think people saw this with Lucio. You're getting a lot of value with the left click. So they're just nerfing it a little bit, but it's still going to be pretty good. I think Lucio will still be good. Wanted, thank you for the raid. I appreciate it. Hope you had a great stream. Fun games today. Sorry, I was reading patch notes. I probably should have mentioned that. Thank you, Wanted. Hope you had a great stream. Welcome. So, like, this makes sense. Not the... He said no boop nerf? I mean, I don't think that... Here, you want my take on this? Ready for my take? Oh, you're reading it too? Heck yeah. Here's my take on the boop. I don't think they should nerf the distance of the boop. It's the range that you can boop somebody. You get what I'm... Does that make sense? It's not the how far they get booped. It's the range that you can boop them from that I think people have the concern with. So, like, if you're, like, 10 meters away or something like that, it just feels like Lucio has this wide range to boop you. So you don't have to be as close. Which, the really good Lucio players understand that, and you can see that min-max they do, where you just get absolutely rolled. But the range of the boop, I'm fine with. I honestly am fine with it. I know I meme a little bit about the tank passive, but, like, Lucio's needed that for a long time. That's the issue kind of people have with it. Is this the range that you can get booped from? Mercy, the blaster, the base projectile size reduced from 0.25 to 0.2 meters, and the total projectile size is now 0.3. It looks like there was a little bit of a misspell in here. I think they meant to say from 0.25 to 0.2 meteors, because that blaster was shooting out meteors. So I think there was a little bit in that one. So it's a little bit less on the meteor side of things, but it still should be pretty good. That's still going to be a pretty large radius. Is this a buff or a nerf? It's a slight nerf. It's a goodbye battle mercy. I'm going to be real with you. I don't think many mercies were in games. Even like if you're standing still in game, like the training range like bots are, then yeah, like you might get that. But I don't think mercies could get value with it. But I don't think it was like as there's a difference between shooting at a training range bot in front of you and standing still, not even doing anything, and like when somebody's actually using the movement. So, and then finally, the last hero on this list of nerfs and buffs today, which I'm okay with today's nerfs and buffs, ZENYATTA. Base health decreased from 100 to 75. So ZENYATTA's going to be back. ZENYATTA's, remember how I said the issue with ZENYATTA was that they gave ZENYATTA 25 HP, and then they also gave supports 50 more HP, which then made ZENYATTA be overtuned, right? ZENYATTA with that like 25 HP breakpoint situation made ZENYATTA like not a glass cannon anymore. ZENYATTA was like a very sturdy cannon that you really had to heck up to get rolled as them, right? And then then the snap kick, the knockback decreased by 25%, which probably good. It was pretty, like, this will allow for people to stay on ZENYATTA a little bit more, so I still think Zen will be good, but this was a much-needed change, so I'm, like, happy with that. Why the kick? Because you send them so far back with the kick that you can't get to the ZENYATTA, and, like, what makes ZENYATTA so easy to get a lot of the time is, like, that effective range. But ZENYATTA kept you out of it with the knockback, so they needed to find a way to make it harder for you to get boot back, so that way you can actually make a play in the Zen, because the ZENYATTA already has peel to begin with from other heroes. So it's like, this is probably going to be fine. I'm just glad to see a ZENYATTA nerf, and it's good to see that they actually did that. I will say, this was a fairly quick, like, turnaround patch, which I also am very happy to see. I want to point that out. I really do think this is, like, a pretty good thing that they're making these changes this aggressively. I'm okay with that. I'm sure there's going to be some discussion about things that still should be buffed and nerfed. But from, like, a blueprint point of view, I still think this is in a good spot and probably a little bit better spot. Yeah, definitely let me know if you, you know, what you think in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, and we'll go from there. All right. There you go. There's your changes and your buffs.